Daniel bought his house in Austin, Texas in 2018 for $420,000. Today, Zillow says it's worth $780,000. That's $360,000 in equity gains in just 6 years. On paper, Daniel is $360,000 richer than he was before. He feels wealthy. His friends congratulate him. His parents are proud. Every dinner conversation somehow ends with someone mentioning how much home values have gone up. But here's what nobody talks about. Daniel still drives the same 2015 Honda Accord, still packs lunch 4 days a week to save money, still has $34,000 in his retirement account, which hasn't changed much because he can barely afford to contribute after the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. His emergency fund has $6,800 in it. He's one major car repair away from credit card debt. Daniel is worth $360,000 more on paper and exactly $0 richer in reality. He can't spend his equity. He can't invest it. He can't retire on it. All he can do is watch the Zillow estimate go up and feel a strange combination of wealthy and broke at the same time. This is the phantom wealth effect. And if you own a home in a market that's appreciated significantly, you're probably experiencing it right now without realizing how much it's costing you. My name is James, and I've spent way too much time thinking about why homeowners feel rich but act broke. If you've ever wondered why your net worth looks impressive but your bank account doesn't, make sure you hit that subscribe button to James Wealth, because what I'm about to show you might completely change how you think about home equity. Let's start with why this illusion is so powerful. Home equity feels like wealth because the number is real. Daniel's house genuinely did appreciate $360,000. If he sold it today, he'd walk away with that money minus selling costs and capital gains taxes. The wealth exists, it's not imaginary, but it's frozen, locked, inaccessible without major life disruption. And that makes it fundamentally different from every other kind of wealth. If Daniel had $360,000 in a brokerage account, he could spend $10,000 tomorrow without changing his life. He could pull $2,000 a month to supplement his income. He could retire earlier. He could take a lower-paying job he actually enjoys. The wealth would be liquid, flexible, working for him. But $360,000 in home equity does none of that. It just sits there growing on paper, making Daniel feel successful while his actual financial flexibility remains exactly the same as it was in 2018. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median American homeowner has about 68% of their total net worth tied up in their primary residence. For homeowners under 45, that number jumps to over 75%. 3/4 of everything they own is locked in one illiquid asset they live in. That's not wealth diversification. That's wealth concentration. And it creates a psychological trap where people feel rich because their net worth is high, but act broke because their cash flow and liquid assets haven't changed. Now let me show you what this costs in real terms. Daniel's house appreciated $360,000 over 6 years. That sounds incredible until you realize what else he could have done with the down payment and monthly housing costs. In 2018, Daniel put down $84,000, which was 20 to avoid PMI. His monthly mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and average maintenance costs run about $30,600 a month. If he'd rented a comparable place for $2,200 a month and invested the difference, here's what would have happened. That $84,000 down payment invested in a simple S&P 500 index fund in 2018 would be worth approximately $168,000 today at average market returns. And the $1,400 per month difference between his total housing costs and renting, invested consistently over 6 years, would have grown to about $127,000. Total liquid wealth if he'd rented and invested $295,000, still less than his $330,000 in home equity, but here's the critical difference. That $295,000 would be liquid, accessible, flexible. He could use it, spend it, let it compound further, retire on it. His $360,000 in home equity can't do any of that unless he sells the house, and if he sells, he still needs somewhere to live. So he'd have to buy another house, probably in the same expensive market, and most of that equity would just roll into the next property. The wealth never actually becomes usable. But it gets worse. Because Daniel didn't just lock up his down payment and monthly savings, he also locked up his time and stress. In the past 6 years, Daniel has spent approximately $47,000 on maintenance, repairs, and unexpected housing costs that renters don't pay. A new HVAC system, roof repairs, foundation issues, appliance replacements, pest control, landscaping, the endless list of things that break in a house. That's $47,000 that didn't build equity. It just prevented his asset from deteriorating. He spent hundreds of hours on home maintenance, repairs, yard work, and dealing with contractors. Time he could have spent building skills, side income, relationships, or just living his life. Homeownership demanded it. And here's the thing nobody mentions when they brag about their home appreciation. Daniel's equity gain was passive. He didn't create it. The Austin real estate market created it. He just happened to be there holding an asset when prices went up. If Daniel had bought in Detroit instead of Austin, or if he'd bought in 2006 instead of 2018, that same down payment and monthly payment would have resulted in zero equity gains or even losses. The wealth wasn't the result of his financial decisions, it was geographic and timing luck disguised as smart investing. Now let's talk about what happens when this illusion shapes your financial decisions. Because the phantom wealth effect doesn't just freeze your assets, it changes your behavior in ways that keep you broke. Daniel feels wealthy because his net worth increased $360,000. That feeling creates permission. Permission to not save aggressively, permission to not max out retirement accounts, permission to spend more on lifestyle because the house is appreciating anyway. A 2021 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that homeowners who experienced significant home equity gains reduced their savings rate by an average of 23% compared to similar renters. The phantom wealth effect convinced them they were already building wealth through appreciation, so they didn't need to save as much elsewhere. But here's the trap. Home equity gains are not diversified. If the Austin market corrects 20%, which is not historically unusual after rapid appreciation, Daniel's $360,000 in equity becomes $216,000 overnight. Meanwhile, if he'd been building a diversified investment portfolio, a market correction would be temporary and recoverable, not tied to a single local real estate market. Daniel's wealth is geographically concentrated, asset class concentrated, and timing dependent. That's the opposite of what every financial advisor would recommend if you describe it as an investment strategy. Let me give you another example of how this plays out. Jennifer bought a condo in San Diego in 2015 for $380,000. Today it's worth $620,000. Today it's worth $620,000 in equity, and she feels financially successful. Her friends rent and complain about rising rents. She feels like she made the smart choice. But Jennifer's equity is trapped. She can't access it without selling, and if she sells, she'd have to rent or buy in the same expensive market. She's locked into San Diego's cost of living. Her job pays well relative to national averages, but most of that premium gets eaten by the high cost of living. If Jennifer lost her job or wanted to move for a better opportunity in a cheaper city, her equity doesn't help. It's tied to the San Diego housing market. She can't take it with her unless she sells, and selling triggers transaction costs, capital gains taxes, and the need to find new housing. Meanwhile, her friend Alex, who rented and invested aggressively in index funds, has $180,000 in liquid investment. Less than Jennifer's equity, but infinitely more flexible. Alex can move anywhere for any job opportunity without worrying about selling a house. Alex can retire earlier because the investments are accessible. Alex can take career risks Jennifer can't afford because the wealth is liquid. Jennifer feels richer. Alex is actually richer. Here's where it gets even more expensive. The phantom wealth effect often leads homeowners to make financial decisions that prioritize the house over everything else. They'll skip retirement contributions to afford a larger mortgage payment. They'll drain emergency funds to cover a down payment. They'll take on home equity loans to renovate because it increases the home value. All of these decisions are justified by the belief that the home is their primary wealth-building tool. And in a continuously appreciating market, that belief gets reinforced. Every year the Zillow estimate goes up, they feel validated. But real wealth isn't about what your house is theoretically worth. It's about financial flexibility, options, and the ability to make life decisions without being trapped by illiquid assets. Let me show you the retirement math on this because that's where the phantom wealth effect becomes genuinely dangerous. Daniel and Jennifer both believe their home equity is their retirement plan. They've heard people say your house is your biggest investment so many times that they believe it's true. But here's what happens when they try to retire. Daniel's house is worth $780,000 when he's 65. He owns it free and clear. That's his primary asset. To convert it into retirement income, he has three options: sell it and downsize, taking the equity and buying a cheaper home elsewhere. That works, but it forces him to move, leave his community, and hope the cheaper market he's moving to hasn't also appreciated. Or he can take a reverse mortgage, which comes with high fees and complex terms that often don't favor the borrower. Or he can rent out part of his house, becoming a landlord in retirement, which is work and stress. None of these are simple. None of them are as flexible as having $780,000 in a diversified retirement portfolio where he can withdraw 4% annually without touching the principal or being forced to move. The phantom wealth effect convinced Daniel that his appreciating home equity was building his retirement. But when retirement actually arrives, converting that equity into usable retirement income is complicated, expensive, and limiting. Compare that to someone who rented affordably, invested aggressively, and built a retirement portfolio. Their wealth is liquid, diversified, and designed to be converted into income. That's real retirement wealth. Home equity is retirement wealth only if you're willing to sell and drastically change your living situation. Now, I know what you're thinking, but James, isn't home equity still better than renting and having zero equity? And yes, in many markets and situations, buying a home does build wealth over time. I'm not saying home ownership is bad. I'm saying the psychological trap of feeling wealthy because of home equity while staying broke in liquid assets is dangerous. The solution isn't to never buy a home. It's to understand what home equity actually is, which is forced savings in an illiquid, geographically concentrated, single asset class investment that you also happen to live in. It's not bad, but it's not the same as liquid, diversified wealth, and confusing the two creates financial decisions that limit your options. Here's what you should do instead. If you own a home, stop counting your home equity as your primary net worth metric. Track your liquid net worth separately. That's your savings, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, everything you could access without selling your house. That number tells you how financially flexible you actually are. If your liquid net worth is low but your home equity is high, you're not wealthy. You're house rich and cash poor, which is a dangerous position because it leaves you vulnerable to any life change that requires liquidity. Job loss, medical emergency, unexpected opportunity, anything that needs cash, you're stuck. Second, don't let home equity appreciation replace actual savings. Just because your house went up $50,000 this year doesn't mean you can skip retirement contributions or emergency fund building. Those are different types of wealth with different purposes. Home equity is not a substitute for liquid savings. Third, be realistic about what your home equity can actually do for you. If your entire net worth is your home, your retirement plan is going to require selling and moving, or taking on debt in retirement through a reverse mortgage. That's not financial independence. That's a forced liquidation event. Fourth, if you're deciding whether to buy or rent, don't assume buying is always the wealth-building move. Run the actual numbers. Compare the total cost of ownership, which includes mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, opportunity cost of the down payment, and transaction costs when you eventually sell, against renting and investing the difference. In many expensive markets, renting and investing aggressively builds more liquid wealth than buying. The phantom wealth effect exists because home equity is visible, tangible, and socially celebrated. People brag about home appreciation at dinner parties. Nobody brags about their Vanguard index fund balance. But the index fund balance is liquid, flexible, and actually usable. The home equity just makes you feel successful while your financial options stay limited. Daniel feels like he's worth $360,000 more than he was in 2018, but his life hasn't changed. He still can't afford to take risks. He still can't retire early. He still has to keep working to cover the ongoing costs of the asset that's supposedly making him rich. The wealth is phantom because it exists but can't be used. Your net worth is not your home value. Your wealth is what you can actually access and use to create options in your life. And if all of your wealth is locked in your house, you're not as rich as you think. You're just living in an expensive asset that makes you feel successful while keeping you trapped. I spent way too much time thinking about this so you don't have to. If this changed how you think about home equity, hit that like button and subscribe to James Wealth. Next video, we're breaking down why paying off your mortgage early might be the worst financial decision you can make. You won't want to miss it. I'll see you in the next one.